The stage is yours.
Great, and many thanks, Yaniv, for taking the initiative to organise the first of these, which was very much about, I think the first one was early career researcher development, which is how CHEP has been leading on it, but it's quite rapidly broadened, and different slices through the university have had different versions of the presentation I'll give. And we've been doing this for about 4 months, so things have evolved over that time, and not least in the last couple of weeks, actually, so just before Easter, we got the knowledge exchange framework outcome, which I will share with you. So this is a rough agenda. We'll cover quite a lot of territory, and it really is a basis for allowing plenty of time at the end to ask questions and have some discussion. And as before, if you could stay on mute and videos off, that will just help everyone concentrate and with bandwidth. So needless to say, we are in an extraordinary environment, very turbulent, uncertain, and I think it's really important that we recognise that turbulence and uncertainty, but also view it a time of opportunity. So just to acknowledge huge effects on staff and student health, well-being, work-life balance, the heroic work that's been done to move teaching on to largely online for extended periods, the closure then reopening of labs, which has resulted in lower productivity, but those labs continue to work and have done since June of last year or early July. Many of our funders have been affected variously, particularly the charities have seen a major reduction in their ability to raise charitable funds during the pandemic. Elimination of pretty much all travel, which has hit people who do field work, international collaborations as a major part of their research. But throughout all of this, there have been some opportunities developing, not least because people have got much more used to working online and collaborating at a distance in a way that was always possible before, but it just seems easier now out of necessity. As a note of optimism, the government remains committed to significantly increasing research and development expenditure and is still aiming to get to 22 billion by 2025, which should be in pre-COVID GDP, getting to a target of 2.4% of GDP. And there's a continuing expectation that this should be a key part of the post-COVID recovery. But the realities of the economic situation the coming year is likely to continue to be tough. And also just to note, the Advanced Research and Invention Agency, ARIA, is forming, although what form that will take is still a bit uncertain. And just to state the obvious that Brexit has occurred, but we now have associate membership for Horizon Europe, and it's really important we re-engage strongly with our European partners in order to take advantage of that and the opportunities the collaboration represents. We're working under a university bridging strategy, which was in response to COVID, but very much looking forward to the longer term horizon. The fundamentals remain unchanged and are likely to do so. Very much an increased emphasis on community, the notion of one Southampton, and that people really matter and are at the heart of what we do. Increased emphasis on sustainability, including environmental sustainability, increased emphasis on our relevance to cities and region, which plays into the levelling up agenda, and a recapitulation of the fact that research and enterprise are at the core of what we do, one of the main missions of the university, and it's about continuing to develop next generations of leaders, importance of research culture and community, strong, diverse research base, addressing global challenges, including sustainability, working collaboratively, including with local communities as well as industry, and research and enterprise income, outputs, impact remain key KPIs, key performance indicators. And just as of yesterday, the consultation on the new university strategy has been launched, but I fully expect it will cover the things that are largely in the strategy and in the bridging strategy in particular. This is the old strategy, and I won't dwell on it because we're moving away from this, but just to say that the KPIs that are directly relevant to research are how we do in the ref, our research income, and relevant to both research and enterprise is other income, of which about half is our enterprise, and enhancing our reputation, which happens as a result of our research. So 4 of these 12 so-called levers depend to a significant extent on our research and enterprise activities. This is the research and enterprise strategy on a page that we're working to. The vision is that we're really strong at this, that is a key part of what we do as a university, that we focus on addressing society's greatest challenges using an interdisciplinary approach in many cases. And underpinning it are focus areas on people, particularly staff and students, interdisciplinary research, our enterprise ecosystem, funding, the interface and relevant to this group, which is largely professional services staff, to strengthen the interfaces between relevant professional services and both our internal and external stakeholders involved in research and enterprise, and then doing all of the above in a way that enhances our international profile reputation. And I think, while there may be some significant tweaks to this, including the local agenda and sustainability, the essence of this will remain largely in what follows as under the new university strategy. Just to put some numbers to it, obviously stated now a couple of times, research and enterprise are major contributors to the university's long-term reputation. Financially, research and enterprise is about 37% of the university's economy, that's made up of about 120 million annually of income from competitively won research grants, 40-odd million of enterprise income from trading activities, 46 million of QR funding, which we get from research income based on the outcome of the REF, and 4.5 million of higher education innovation funding that largely supports enterprise and some of our public good activities. And we have a well-deserved strong reputation and strong sustained performance for high quality research and enterprise, which helps us do well nationally and internationally in league table positions. Just breaking down our research funding mixture a little bit in more detail, 40% of it roughly comes from UKRI, that's the research councils, EPSRC, MRC, so on, and Innovate UK. 17% comes from other UK government, that includes the NHS through the NIHR. 13% comes from the EU, that's gone down from about 16% as a result of the run up to Brexit. 13% UK charities, and then 7% from UK industry, although UK industry often comes alongside UKRI funding. So that gives you a breakdown. It's actually a reasonably healthily diverse breakdown of funding sources. So although charities are having a hard time, they are still, and EU has obviously been affected, those are a minority of our total funding situation. In terms of our competitive position, this shows the total research funding for each university for the last year that we have data, which is 2018-19, for the Russell Group universities. So those are the major research intensive universities in the UK. And what you see is the so-called Golden Triangle: Oxford, Cambridge, UCL and Imperial. Particularly the first 3 of those are some way ahead of the rest of the pack. They are in a different league. And then you have Manchester and Edinburgh that are just large institutions. And then there's a plateau, which we're sort of somewhere in the middle of the mid-tier Russell Group universities. And shown here are 8 universities in light blue teal colour, which are the ones that we choose to benchmark our performance against. And I'll refer back to this comparator group in the next few slides. Adjusting for size, so looking at research funding per FTE, full-time equivalent member of ERE staff who is listed as is eligible to be a principal investigator on a grant. This shows us in the middle of that pack of 8 universities. In fact, we're at the top of a pack shown here, where Warwick, Bristol and Sheffield over the last 5 or so years have moved away from the rest of the pack. And I'll just explain why in a couple of slides' time. Research funding, and this reflects the national position since the financial crisis, has remained pretty much flat over the last 10 years. And our research funding, certainly on an FTE basis, has also remained flat, as have most of our competitors, other than these three, that have seen some significant growth. If you break it down, research income per FTE by subject area or cost center, this chart shows across about 30 different subjects in the university where we rank versus the sector. Where you see a bar like this one for clinical medicine that goes up to 900K per FTE per year, and we're ranked 22nd, the 5th to 10th ranked universities, or the 5th ranked university is at 900 per person, the 10th ranked is at 400, and we're down at about 200 per person. So that's an area, clinical medicine, where we might hope to do a bit better, as we might in biological sciences. But then in geography, we're second in the UK on funding per FTE, and electronics and electrical engineering, which also includes a good fraction of the Zepler Institute, the ORC, is ranked at 5th in the UK. And you see there's a mixture across the university. Certainly, if we aim to be somewhere close to the top 10 in the UK, we'd rather not have too many disciplines that are outside the top 20 in the UK. So that indicates areas where we might want to do better. If we look more narrowly at our competitor set, this shows that same diagram by subject area, but only compared to the 8 comparator universities. And it's a similar picture. We're generally, well, it is variable, but in many cases we're towards the middle of this pack as well. One notable exception is engineering, where we would be in the middle of the pack, and we're strong at engineering, were it not for those 3 universities, Sheffield, Warwick, and Bristol, which are in a different league from the rest of us. And that's because they've got a share of the high value manufacturing catapult at each of them, which is a major investment, including major industry funding, which they've channeled through their university books. And that actually doesn't just distort the picture in engineering, but it distorts the overall university picture. And there may be some lessons that we need to learn from that about making bids for large strategic investments going forward. Rather remarkably, this is a slide that I get, and several others do each month, of our research funding, how many applications we're putting in. This is by faculty, so the 5 faculties of the university, with a target that's set through business planning. And rather remarkably, despite COVID coming in for about a third of last year, our applications actually exceeded target by 40-odd million pounds last year, despite the ravages of COVID. And also, slightly surprisingly, our awards exceeded the target by about 13 million on a target of 110 million, which again is an outstanding achievement, some variation by faculty again, given the distractions that came with COVID. I have to say that it's tougher this year, and we're a little bit behind applications and awards, and that's partly because funders are sitting on their money until they know when we're likely to get out of COVID, and so there've been delayed decision making on quite a lot of grant proposals at the time of speaking. And consistent with that, our success rate has gone down slightly. The university average is this green line in the middle. We were tracking at a fairly solid 25% over the last 5 or 6 years, and it's dropped down over the last year to about 23%. But that's perhaps not surprising, given the effects of COVID. And our overhead recovery remains good at round about 30%, which is one of our targets, to keep it at that level. And again, that's quite encouraging, because that's actually keeps the university running, including a lot of professional services. It's not just about the money, it's also about the outputs of our research. And one way we look at this is how many papers we publish, we're shown here in the University of Southampton. Although we're not the largest of our comparator universities, we're consistently at or near the top in terms of the number of papers we publish or research outputs we publish over the last 5 years. And I can explain this if anyone's interested, but one way one measures the quality of our outputs are field-weighted citation indices. And if you're around about 2, which we consistently are, as are our comparators, that's a good sign. If you're at 1, that's the international world average for quality or number of citations per publication. And UK Russell Group universities are typically at about double that, and we're consistently in that territory. Don't be too alarmed about the apparent decline here. The most recent data is actually the most volatile. The most robust data is 5 years in the past, because it takes that long for publications to generate citations in most cases. Enterprise, and I want to say a little bit about this, is a very strong suit for this university. In fact, we've just got evidence it's a very, very strong suit for this university. It comes across, enterprise is delivered through quite a wide range of activities, including enterprise units, consultancy, access to our research facilities, CPD courses we run, incubation and acceleration activities, including our science park, catalyst programs, Set Squared, Future Worlds, iCure, etc., and student enterprise. And I'm delighted that just a couple of days ago we learned that our student Enactus team has yet again won the UK championships and will go on to the global world championships for free enterprise activities, which is a fantastic result. We have an enterprise strategy. We're in the process of refreshing that, and we're about to, in the next week or two, be consulting on our revised enterprise strategy with the wider university. Just in terms of our funding levels in enterprise, and we return various metrics, but including our enterprise income to the Higher Education Business Community Interaction Survey each year. This is Southampton, and by the numbers here, it's worth about £60 million a year to us. The next catching us quickly, as it looks, is Birmingham. But those other 6 competitors are at about half the level of enterprise income we have. So this financially is significant and a strong suit for us. About 2 years ago, it was announced that there was going to be a knowledge exchange framework launched, and this was introduced in 2020, and we submitted to it in October. It's an attempt, and I think it's worked quite well for us, a balanced scorecard of knowledge exchange activities across 7 different categories, which I'll explain a little bit later more. And Research England are very keen that no one composes a league table out of the KEF outcomes. It is supposed to be a balanced scorecard. So one of the ways they achieve that is that we are compared with 15 other large research intensive universities. That's cluster V, which is the 24 institutions of the Russell Group minus 8 institutions plus the London Business School, just so it isn't just the Russell Group. As yet, this has no funding implications, but may supersede the role of the HEBSIS return. There's also the Knowledge Exchange Concordat, which we are signed up to, which is a set of principles for universities to adopt and evaluate ourselves against. The KEF and the KEC align reasonably well with the 2018 enterprise strategy, but some further work's needed, which is behind what I just said about a revised enterprise strategy. And we need to revisit this with respect to particularly the new university strategy, the environmental sustainability strategy, and what we're doing under the Civic University Agreement. And so we're updating this as I speak, as I said. I won't go into this, but this is technically how the outcomes of the KEF are calculated in 7 categories, which are research partnerships, working with business, working with the public and third sector, skills, enterprise and entrepreneurship, local growth and regeneration, IP and commercialization, public and community engagement. And this is the outcome for Southampton. What you see is this cake or target, depending on how you look at it, with 10 rings, where the 10th ring is being in the top decile, the top 10% of universities in the UK for a particular category. So we are in that top 10% for public and community engagement, IP and commercialisation, and working with the public and third sector. And then if you look a little bit more closely, there's a dark band which reflects the average performance of our comparator cluster, so the large research intensive universities in cluster V. So what you'll notice is that in each of these wedges of our pie, we're at, or in about half the cases above, in fact all but three cases above the average for our comparator set. And even in areas where we're relatively weak, skills, enterprise and entrepreneurship, which includes student enterprise and continuing professional development, we're still above the benchmark for our cluster. And you should just remember that all of this is normalized by the size of the university. So the fact we're low in this area says it's not as important a part of our economy as it might be for particularly the post-92 universities that do a lot of non-degree teaching, non-credit bearing teaching, CPD and the like. Just to show that not all universities are the same, this is the University of Birmingham that looks quite different. They've gone very big. In fact, they're top in the sector on local growth and regeneration, but they're very, very weak in skills, enterprise and entrepreneurship. They're considerably below the average and certainly below us on public and community engagement, for instance. So different places prioritize different things. And if you look at the different clusters, so no one can make a league table of it. There's an arts grouping, there's a STEM grouping, and then letters E, J, M, V, and X, so random letters assigned. You see that they look very different depending on which part of the university sector you're in. Cluster V here, which we're part of, again looks very different from the small post-92 or arts-focused universities. As I said, Research England are very keen that no one makes a league table out of this. So please don't do this at home. But the Vice-Chancellor and I separately couldn't resist, and we came up with the same methodology, which, being simple-minded people, was simply to take our score by decile and add it up and compare it with the rest of the sector. And when you do that in the 7 different areas, you find that Southampton scores 61, which is the best score in our cluster and is the best score in the sector. So we win. That's not the point, but it looks pretty good. What's also interesting is that we're the only one of our comparator group that is at or above the average in our comparator group in each of the categories. We have none below, which is not true of any of our comparators. And even if you look at the next group of universities, only Leicester is in that same category. Every other one has 1 or 2 or more activities that are below the average. And you'll also notice in this, if you like, the second tier is still quite research intensive universities. The rest of the Russell group is here. The overall scores are a bit lower. These are mostly in the 40s, with Leicester being the best, whereas in the previous grouping, they were mostly in the 50s, with ourselves at 60, which is, it turns out, the best in the whole sector. If you go at the next level detail and look at under each of these 7 categories, there are subsidiary 2 or 3 categories. You'll see Southampton's here, where in the subsidiary categories we scored 10 in quite a lot, but there are some where there's room for improvement, particularly in CPD, which is an area we want to emphasize. Student or graduate student startups is another one. Funding from research partnerships is another one where we see room for improvement. But generally, it's a very positive outcome for us, and hopefully we'll have both financial and reputational benefit. So strong performance overall that we can collectively be really proud of. both the overall strength and I think particularly the balance in our knowledge exchange activities. We're analysing this in a bit more detail, and we'll consider it at Southampton Enterprise Board, and very much look to continue to monitor our performance in both the HEBSIS return, which is what we've been doing up to now, but now KEF seems to be a more important. And as I said, there's some areas where we think we can do better in future years, and we want to understand better how we manage the trade-offs between different things that we're undertaking in this space. Just want to say briefly on the Research Excellence Framework. You'll be aware that this is an activity run every 5 to 7 years. We had a good return in 2014, measured by power and research intensity. It's a peer review process, panels formed for each unit of assessment, informed by metrics, and the evaluation is 60% research outputs, 25% impact case studies, and 15% a self-assessment of the environment. And I'm very glad and relieved that our REF 2021 return was submitted on the 30th of March 2021, slightly delayed by COVID. It was originally supposed to be in November, and we'll know the outcome of this in April 2022. I have to say that the process went remarkably smoothly, and huge thanks to everyone involved in that. And we were even able to have a small online celebration with 200 odd people, and including a lovely poem from Ella Frears, our poet in residence. I believe all units of assessment are on track to achieve good quality submissions, and it really is a fantastic effort by many people across the university, particularly able to maintain focus in the critical last year, despite what COVID was doing for all of us. It's a strategic goal to improve our power ranking, but I think it's unlikely we'll achieve this, limited essentially by our student numbers. But I'm cautiously optimistic for a significant improvement in quality and our quality ranking. And we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed and see how it pans out in April. And the funding consequences of whatever we achieve will be only revealed sometime after the results are announced next April. I want to say a little bit about people. Within the research and enterprise strategy, it's very much to enable staff and students to realise their potential, building on the reward framework, particularly flexibility in job families and ERE career pathways. Obviously, with HR and CHEP, we have a programme of leadership management engagement modules that all staff, including actually professional service staff, are invited to attend, encouraged to attend. We're in the process of revising the ED&I strategy, and in fact, we've now launched it, so I haven't updated this particular slide. And we're developing an increased portfolio of research and enterprise relevant skills via CHEP, which Yaniv, our host today, represents. And one of our key things is achieving more consistent mentoring opportunities for all our staff. And in my view, it goes with the territory. Research and enterprise involve people thinking differently and innovatively, and so it's very much about empowerment of the individual and tapping into individual creativity to do extraordinary things. I put one slide in on professional services, and I've done something similar for each of the different ERE groups I've talked to so far. Really just to emphasize for this group that your contributions are critical to supporting every phase of the research and enterprise process. And I just list, and this isn't comprehensive, but just literally at every stage and in ways that what one perhaps doesn't realize, but cleaning has become a really important activity during COVID, and it always has been a really important COVID. So literally everyone contributes. The research and enterprise strategy identified 4 years ago when we launched it that the interface between research and enterprise practitioners and professional services are critical and needs attention. And I believe we've made good progress in some areas, but there's still a long way to go. And in my view, and I've heard it from many colleagues in professional services, that behaviours and attitudes are at the heart of the matter. And quite frankly, in some cases, behaviours from some ERE colleagues are not what we would like. And we need to develop a better mutual understanding between stakeholders and trust and respect around that. And also, when behaviours are not reflecting our values, we need to act on that and make sure that individuals are aware that they are not reflecting the values of the institution. And this couples strongly and obviously with the culture of research and enterprise that we're trying to develop. Just to end, a lot of good things have been happening. I mentioned the KEF. There's been some amazing work through COVID by Research and Innovation Services and the Research Finance Hub, dealing with a huge number of short notice projects about COVID mitigation. Colleagues working on the healthcare front line, vaccine trials that have gone very well, the citywide testing pilot, the PERSO PPE project, drone delivery of medicines to the Isle of Wight, and the list goes on. So it gives a really clear picture of the importance of having a strong and diverse research base, both at the university and the national level. And I'm sure we're all very keen to ensure that we get back on track to sort of more normal, but it'll be a new normal operation as soon as we can, while maintaining safety and well-being. So that's pretty much what I've got. Hopefully that gives you an overview of what we're doing in research and enterprise, and really to emphasize for this group, professional service. By the way, this slide has not changed from the one I've given 3 times previously to ERE colleagues. Professional services contributions are vital to our research and enterprise success, and that's a key part of our university mission. So with that, I will conclude, just slightly over time, but I put in extra KEF slides, so apologies for that. I will cease sharing my slides and ask Yaniv to vector questions my way. So please don't be shy.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Wow, this definitely is a record in terms of attendance.
Yeah, 138. Thank you very much, Mark. Before we start the question, I actually would like to extend my thanks, probably not just mine, but the entire, anybody who's engaged in research at the university. It's needless to say, without the professional staff, this research would not happen. So thank you. I had a lot of interaction with Rees, with finance. I mean, without them, nothing would happen. So thank you very much. And I'm sure many are very grateful for the help and support. And now we will open the floor for if anybody wants to ask Mark any kind of question. You can either raise your hand or type, whatever you feel comfortable.
Yes, so just a shout out to Virginia Hodge, who's one of our currently 3 entrepreneurs in residence and a very valuable resource to the university, sponsored by the Royal Society, so spending significant time with us. And actually Virginia's offered to be involved in our wrap up of the REF and helping us understand lessons learned from her experience of doing similar things in industry. So good to have you on the call, Virginia. I'm sure there are questions, so there's no such thing as a dumb question. What you've always wanted to ask about research and enterprise, even if you think it's a rumor or a myth, share it and I'll do my best. Yeah, a hand, but I don't see whose it is, so.
It's Bacchus.
I am Mark. Thanks very much. Very informative. Really very good statistic to have a look at. 2 questions. The first one is, are these statistics public? And the second one is, what do you expect us to get in the REF? Better or lower than the next one, and the last one? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much all of that's public data. Not necessarily, and I'm more than happy to share the slides. Probably not the KEF analysis, because I'm first quite scared of David Sweeney, who's the head of Research England, who's a scary Scotsman, and so he's very adamant that this shouldn't be turned into a league table. So I might not trumpet that. I'm rather hopeful someone else outside the university will do the same simple-minded analysis that we've done. Obviously, the REF is very competitive. I don't know, and everyone's very cagey about what other universities are doing. So I try and get things out of my counterparts at our peer institutions, but don't get much detail. And I don't give them much detail either. I think we have a good process. I think that our commitment to research at this university remains very strong. I think we will have a significantly better quality ranking than we got in the last ref, but we will have lost out on power, and we'll have to see what that means in money. We've not shrunk, but other universities have done better at recruiting students, which means they've done better at recruiting staff, and so they've grown significantly. Exeter, notably, have grown by several hundred staff over the last 7 years, in a way we've not. So I think that those around us may have moved ahead. So for power, if that remains a metric, I suspect we'll be below 15, if I had to guess. But I suspect we might be, we were only 18th for quality last time. I might be hopeful we go up to closer to 10th for quality, but I'm not taking any bets around that. That's just my sort of guess to how it might look.
Okay.
Thanks for the question, back. Sorry, whoever's raised that, I will.
Sarah.
Oh, right, thanks. Sarah, then Catherine. Sarah Bogle. Good to see you, Sarah. Or hear from.
Hi, how are you?
Just say who you are.
Well, I'm a faculty ref officer in Faculty of Social Sciences. Just a very quick question about the KEF thing, which obviously it's fairly new, so, and it's great we've done so well, but what does that mean? You know, have you got particular thoughts initially about what next and where you want to focus? Because sometimes when you do really well, it's not so obvious what you need to do next as a result. So just,
well, the KEF is, sorry, thanks for the question, Sarah. The KEF is actually a genuinely useful diagnostic, and it's identified a couple of areas where we could do better. And we'd already identified, actually, before we got the KEF result, that continuing professional development is something we haven't really given attention to. So there is a business case being developed for creating a CPD, continuing professional development hub, with the aim of perhaps doubling the amount of CPD we offer. And that also couples with the local engagement levelling up agenda. And so that's something where we can see there are other universities who do more of it, do it better than us, apparently, and there's some things we could learn from them. So that's one. We're also surprisingly slightly weak on research partnerships with industry. And this sort of gives us cause to further accelerate what we're doing in our corporate partnership strategy and how we think about that, which I think is going to be a critical part of how the government sees itself getting to the 2.4% GDP. A good amount of that money is going to go to and through industry. So if we want to tap into it, we need to improve our links to probably the big corporates as much as the SMEs, where we play quite strongly. So and we think, but it's not explicit yet, that after a couple of iterations, the KEF will actually inform funding, but that's not the case right now. And the Higher Education Innovation Fund, which I mentioned briefly, is about £4.5 million a year to us. That's informed currently by the HEBSIS return. We think that will move over to the KEF in due course, but that's just our guess at this point. So thanks for the question.
Catherine Concordat.
Yes, hi. Thanks very much for the great presentation. Yeah, in fact, actually, you probably just covered a little bit at the moment. I picked up that you'd cited that maybe we could improve our sort of collaboration research with industry. And I guess my question was, well, you know, how do you make that shift? What plans do you have for that, to tackle that? And is that going to right across faculties? Do you see some areas of opportunity more with, say, I don't know, FEPS, perhaps?
So definitely see it. I mean, just we're not bad at this. We work with about 1,000 companies every year, evidenced by that there's a financial transaction, there's a contract with about 1,000 companies a year. So we do a lot. Yeah. It's just relative to some of our peers, we don't do as much. The strategy we've been following is to try and do more with a few, a lot more with a few. And we have about 20 strategic partners grouped in 4 areas. So aerospace and defense is one, more general engineering and energy is another, IT and communications is a third, and then biotech and pharmaceuticals. And if you look at our top 5, it's BAE Systems, Airbus, GSK, Nestle, and I think it's AstraZeneca. So it's very much in the big engineering, aerospace, defense, and then pharma are 3 of them, biotech, pharma. So and those are the ones with the deep pockets that traditionally invest in R&D. So there's definitely scope for doing more of those, particularly when companies like Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems are saying we only want to be dealing with a small number of universities. So BAE Systems have gone from 60 universities they work with to 5 strategic partners, and we're one of them. And we would expect to see that result in more activity with that company. The biotech companies are a bit different, and they don't work that way. So there it's much more about writing proposals that involve them. In their cases, a lot of that work's clinical trials. So it's a different thing. So working with them would be more about powering up our clinical trials activity. So there isn't one answer for this.
Yeah.
But definitely there's scope across the whole university. But obviously some bits of the university are probably more easily geared up to do this than others.
Just one follow-up then. Do you see a threat to the aerospace and sort of defence research income at all, given what's happened with the market? Do you still see that as fairly?
Well, commercial aviation, yeah. Well, there are 2 things there. Commercial aviation is in a difficult position at the moment, and then there is a real need and desire to do better environmentally. So actually my previous call was with the Aerospace Technology Institute and what they're doing on clean fuels, hydrogen fueled aircraft, biofuels, which I'm not sure whether that stacks up. Sadly, I think we're going into a much more uncertain world. And so I think defense, including national defense, is just going to become more important for a while. I get very nervous what I see, and I don't think this country is likely to sort of reduce its commitment and need for defence in a hurry. So for reasons I don't enjoy, I think that links to defence companies is probably going to become stronger.
Okay, great, thank you.
Kieran.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I found this really interesting. Of course, within student engagement, you don't always bump into the research agenda as much as you might like. I wonder, given you've probably read pretty much everything that's gone in terms of the ref submission, are there areas you'd pull out of particular strength? Anything surprised you? Anything we should be thinking about growing as a university?
Oh, thanks, Kieran. I would encourage anyone to read as much of the ref environment templates as they can stand. I've read them all several times, and they're great documents. At least what went in. There's been a journey, but and they give a wonderful snapshot of the variety, diversity, strength of research at this university at a moment in time, and so they're never going to be more current than now. And some wonderful things that are going on in different areas, particularly as the ED&I champion for the university, just seeing some fantastic things that actually weren't visible to me that are being done to improve and address ED&I issues in different parts of the university. There are no weak areas, and even some areas that were apparently weak 7 years ago, I think are going to be significantly stronger this time. And I'll give a shout out to the business school, which I think has come a long way and is turning into a real research asset for this university. It's a bit like one's children. I don't want to pick favorites or sort of say this bit or that bit is particularly strong. I'd encourage particularly those environment statements, and even if it's just for your bit of the university, have a read. There's some amazing stuff that gets spelt out there. Yeah, thanks, Kieran. Wendy White. Sorry, I do say who you are again.
Hi there. Yes, Wendy White from Library and Arts, for those people on the call who don't know me. My question, Mark, follows on quite nicely from Kieran's, I think, which is we're about to undertake a review, if we haven't started already, of our 3 major interdisciplinary institutes as a sort of post-ref look at our interdisciplinary research landscape. How do you feel as though we're going to best ensure that we have the right environment to spot the kind of unique join between disciplines that's going to meet the next generation requirements, so that we're ahead of that curve?
Yes, so actually we're doing several things, one of which is to review the interdisciplinary institutes, and that's really just good practice that we've had them in place, Institute for Life Sciences, for more than 10 years now, and SMMI and Web Science Institute a little bit less than that, but we've never reviewed them and asked the question of, are they doing, at least in a sort of formal way, are they doing what we want them to do? And I think that the nature of certainly the nature of the world they're in now is very different from the world that they were in when we formed them, and the reasons for having them have changed. And I think most obviously the Web Science Institute, which is what it says on the tin, was started to be very much about web science, is now our answer to AI, big data. It isn't, but potentially could be our answer to cyber, and I think many of us feel that socio-technical interface is really important. So I think we will probably have 3 institutes. We're also looking at having an environmental sustainability activity, and there's a question about whether that's narrow or broad, and how we construct it. But the other thing we're doing, which I think is also really important, is we're going to refresh and move away from having standing groups of university strategic research groups to have more staged activities that address particular opportunities for a particular time, and try and run them more as projects to add funding at different stages. So there's a proposal and I think we envision this being sort of ground up, for having a sandpit to identify an opportunity, an idea, and what solutions would look like. That looks good. We fund it as a project to make the rain, to influence policymakers, research councils, to create a program in that area. That looks good. We fund it to bid for that program, and then it becomes a self-sustaining activity, for instance. And I think that might play into things like ARIA, the Advanced Research and Invention Agency, with sort of more mission-oriented research that is perhaps more time critical than we viewed our institutes and our USRGs up to this point. But things like antimicrobial resistance, which has been a very strong USRG, I think we would want to find a way to continue to support, and the National Biofilms Innovation Centre, which has partly come out of that, might be a route to sustaining that as well. I think we need to be quite agile, quite frankly. There's just a lot going on, and there are opportunities, not least in the levelling up agenda, and that needs perhaps different skills and shorter timeframes than some of the things we've been doing up to now. But thank you for the question.
Mark, we've got a question from Stephen Darby in the chat. If you can see
hi there,
it.
Steve. Do you want to ask your question in person?
Sure, I can do that. Hi.
Hi.
So I'm Steve, just for everybody else's benefit. I'm Steve Darby. I was the ref coordinator in geography. My question was, I was interested to see in one of your slides was talking about the perhaps surprisingly high volume of awards and applications during this last year, when we've all been impacted by COVID. So the first part of the question was about, do we know whether that pattern of bidding is in particular groups of staff? Because I guess we might anticipate, and I know in geography certainly, that our evidence is that bidding activity declined markedly amongst our colleagues who are women and carers and so on.
Yeah.
So that's the first point, but really more broadly and more significantly, my experience at least is that there's quite a number of colleagues, maybe more of us than we care to admit, who are just feeling a bit burnt out from all of this process. And I was curious to know what your thoughts are on how we can support people to reboot their research careers.
Yeah, so just starting with the second one first, I very much recognise and sympathise that. I am feeling quite honestly a bit burnt out by all of this, and I think it was a really tough winter for many of us. I get the sense, and that partly just being in here and randomly meeting people, there's just a bit more of a sense of optimism now, and I think having hopefully a better summer will start to reinvigorate us. But it comes down to local environments, and it's having, heads of research group, immediate line managers, heads of department, heads of school who are sympathetic to the people side of this. I'm very, very clear, and will say it to everyone. People don't write world-class winning proposals or winning research papers by beating them up and setting them targets for doing, you'll get this many proposals in, or you'll write this many papers. That's not how high quality, high impact science research is done. So it requires sympathy and people understanding the personal circumstances and having honest conversations around that, and feeling they can have honest conversations around that, particularly for junior people who I think feel the pressure particularly. And it almost requires us who are more senior to open up and say, I'm finding this difficult, I need help, and sharing a little bit about the anxieties we feel with people who are more junior, to make it acceptable to reveal that. In answer to your first question, I don't have data that goes down to individuals. I don't think that's my job. I don't think that would be appropriate. I look down to individual schools, and particularly at faculties, and I work mostly with Associate Deans Research. And we have very regular meetings, and anecdotally I hear exactly what you said. I'm hearing very clearly, people are tired, people are burnt out, people are heartily fed up and sick about this, and have massive personal anxieties. Husband's been furloughed, or partner's been, lost the job, and that then causes a knock, and the childcare arrangements. Our older parents can't pick the kids up from school, they're homeschooling, all of that. So I'm definitely hearing that, and very, very sympathetic. And I encourage everyone in management positions to be similarly sympathetic and work through what works for that individual. Much more important, we preserve the health of the institution and keep people together and able to grow out of it as quickly as they can, but no quicker than that, rather than break everyone by saying, oh, we're falling behind a target for research applications. Just to be clear, we set a target at the faculty level and even at the school level, but it's a basis for a conversation. It must not get replicated. Oh, we'll divide that by the number of people in the school and that becomes everyone's research target. That was never sensible, and is particularly not now. So I'm more than happy to explore that, but yeah.
Sure, thank you. That's really helpful.
Thanks, Steve.
There was one more question by Virginia about the strategy.
Do ask. Sorry, I'm trying to. I can't see who's raised a hand and the chat at the same time. So yeah, Virginia, and again, I introduced you, but say who you are.
You're on mute, Virginia.
Yes. Someone has to be.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sorry. Thank you very much, Mark. I'm Virginia Hodge. I'm the entrepreneur in residence based at ECS and Future Worlds. And I was just interested, Mark, because you said about the enterprise strategy that it's either been released or it's currently being revised. And just asking if that's going to be publicised more widely, please. Thank you.
Yes, it is. I think a near final version of what we're consulting on has been sent earlier today to the Associate Dean's Enterprise for their confirmation, and then it will start to go out from that. And I believe we're due to bring a paper to UEB on it, or sorry, it'll go to the Southampton Enterprise Board and then UEB in May. So yes, very soon, and I'm happy to share it in its technically draft form with anyone who's interested. Yeah, and I see people are starting to leave us, so that's fine.
Yes, please, Mark. I'd be interested. Thank you.
Yeah. Diana may want to speak. I see.
Virginia, I'll talk to you. We're going to be slotting it in after the consultation of the university strategy is closed. So it's sort of going to follow on after that. And yes. We're coming out for full consultation, and I will consult the EIRs.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Nice to see you, Diana.
I think we are at the end of our time. Yaniv, do you want to wrap us up?
I just want to say that there was a slow start to the questions, but then there was a floods of obviously of interest, and I'm so delighted to see that, you know, obviously this area is impinging and affecting everyone at the university, and there's a great interest all across. So again, I would like to thank Diana for initiating that and suggesting that this event will take place, and obviously for you, Mark, for taking the time. You said, you know, you burned out, but people don't know. But every time I ask you to do, you know, if you be willing to engage with anything, the answer comes in about nanoseconds, and it's always yes. So I'm greatly appreciative for, maybe you are burned out, and if this is under burned out, I do not know what it is in full speed.
Well, thank you. I think I'm fairly resilient, but
thank you. Yeah. So thank you, Mark, very much for that, and everyone.
Thank you, Yaniv, and thanks everyone. Yeah. Have a good remainder of the day and the week, and see you on campus at some point. Take care. Yeah. Bye.